Welcome to Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. I'm Peter Gross, co-host of the original Wild Kingdom with Marlin Perkins and Jim Fowler. When Wild Kingdom aired in the 1960s and 70s, many episodes documented wildlife research efforts. Marlin and Jim accompanied scientists all over the world to observe animals and their natural behaviors. Some of the techniques you'll see in tonight's episodes are no longer necessary by today's standards, but the work is still just as important. Wild Kingdom took viewers to the far corners of the world and cultivated an appreciation for animals and their habitats. Marlin and Jim showed us the importance of preserving the natural world, not just for animals, but for our quality of life. And that's good news for all of us in the Wild Kingdom. So sit back and enjoy Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom right here on RFD TV.
Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom is presented by Mutual of Omaha, people you can count on.
Welcome to Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. Few places remain in the world where wildlife thrives and people are not permitted. One such place is a string of tiny islands called the Leewards, 2,300 miles off North America. One of the islands, called Laysan, is only a bit over 1,000 acres, yet it's the home of some 6 million birds, plus 3 greatly endangered animals. One is the Laysan finch, which is found only here, and another is the Laysan duck, which also occurs nowhere else in the world. Here, too, is the rare Hawaiian monk seal, still recovering from nearly having been wiped out. The Leewards make up the Hawaiian Islands National Wildlife Refuge, and the refuge manager goes there once annually to make population surveys. Thus, we were excited when asked to accompany him. Here at Honolulu, we boarded a U.S. Coast Guard ship for the voyage to Laysan Island. We traveled northwestward along the Leewards, which stretch from Nihoa Island 1,000 miles to Midway Island. It was an area few people have ever seen. And we call today's story, Exploring the Leeward Islands. The 180-foot U.S. Coast Guard buoy tender, Mallow, has brought us finally to our destination. On the bridge, I've joined Palmer Sikora, who is manager of the Hawaiian Islands National Wildlife Refuge, and the ship's captain, Lieutenant Commander Charles Murray. Private vessels, of course, are not permitted to enter this area. We've come to a stop, and below us on the main deck, the Coast Guard crewmen are lowering the small boat which will take us ashore. It's a sturdy boat, and it's almost ready for us to begin the short run to Laysan Island. This venture ashore on Laysan is done annually by Palmer Sikora. It's for the purpose of determining the status of endangered species on the island, as well as to make a survey by which the population statistics for all wildlife can be determined. This is really the moment I've been looking forward to ever since leaving Honolulu, about 1,000 miles behind us. We're among the very few people to visit Laysan since the refuge was established. We're fortunate to have a calm sea today for putting ashore, because with rough water it can be extremely difficult. The weather forecast is good, so we should have no problems. It has taken us only a matter of 5 minutes to move into the Laysan Island shallows. Seals are not uncommon right up near the beach, but it's the onshore life we'll be observing first. The most amazing characteristic of the wildlife found on the Leewards is the fact that the animals are almost wholly unafraid of man, having had no bad experience with humans to imbue in them a sense of fear. A good example of this is the Hawaiian monk seal we've immediately encountered. It could hardly be less concerned about our unexpected appearance. It's altogether possible that this particular seal has never before seen a human being. Some of the rare Laysan Island birds depend on this vegetation, but at one time the greenery here was all but destroyed. This occurred when guano miners working here released 6 pairs of rabbits to establish a source of meat. The rabbits overpopulated and denuded this island. Lost vegetation caused the extinction of 3 bird species found only here. Fortunately, these terns were unaffected. Also unaffected was the species we've just encountered on the ground ahead, some shearwaters. Introducing just one predator here could totally disrupt the ecology. According to Palmer, these shearwaters are powerful and graceful in flight, but they're less than agile on the ground.
My observations here indicate that on the ground, they prefer to remain close together, resting comfortably and occasionally reaching out to preen one another. The shearwaters, like almost all the birds on Laysan Island, have already completed their nesting for this year. But even if they were still doing so, it wouldn't be too obvious, since they nest in burrows. The underground nesting helps protect their eggs, but the eggs of some of the other seabird species which nest here are repeatedly destroyed, such as these ruined eggs of the albatross, which have been washed over by the high tides. Albatrosses often lay their first clutch of eggs on the ground in areas like this, which are subject to being flooded. Fortunately, all of the eggs are not ruined, because many of the albatross also nest in a safer area farther inland. Some 6 million birds live here, even though this is not really a very large island. The nearly circular Laysan Island is only about 2 miles in diameter, and directly in its center is this sizable shallow lake. It's an essentially lifeless body of water, since it is fully 3 times as salty as the surrounding seawaters. Though most of the vegetation is little more than a low ground cover, this cluster of short palms represents the only trees to be found anywhere on the island. Particularly fond of soaring over the lake are the numerous frigate birds, which are common here. Powerful flyers, they have characteristically long, narrow wings, and as soon as they leave the nest, they're able to fly with great skill for prolonged periods. Another very distinctive bird here is the tropic bird, which is pure white as an adult. Young tropic birds have speckled plumage, and they're fed by the parent bird through the regurgitation of partially pre-digested food. Such feeding continues for just over a month after hatching. Tropic birds move awkwardly on the ground because their legs are weak and can scarcely support them. But they more than compensate for this shortcoming with their flying ability. Stark white with scarlet beak, the tropic bird is a very handsome resident of the Leewards. Its nesting period on Laysan Island is almost over, and the fledgling birds, some of them still wearing down feathers, will soon be learning to fly. Although taking off is sometimes a problem for adults because of weak legs, once aloft, the bird maneuvers with great skill. A thin red tail becomes evident in flight, but what also quickly becomes apparent is the special and very unusual flying ability this bird possesses. The tropic bird sometimes actually seems to fly backwards.
To make better use of our remaining time here, we'll separate for our observations. It was along the shoreline of Laysan Island that I encountered and was able to closely watch one of the 3 greatly endangered species which are found here. Just over the rocks on the shoreline here, another of the tropic birds appears and displays its unusual backward flying ability. But my interest now is in more closely observing the endangered seal found on this island. The Hawaiian monk seal almost invariably comes to Laysan Island to give birth to its black pup, even though it's also found on other Leeward Islands. One has the sense of being in a Garden of Eden because of the rare tameness exhibited by such animals here as this monk seal. At seeing me, she doesn't flee, but instead approaches. The same lack of fear exhibited by the female is reflected in her pup. By 1900, these monk seals had almost been exterminated by sealers. Now, with protection, the population has increased to just over 1,000. But that's still far from being a healthy, stable population, and that's why this species is still considered endangered. Having had this good look at the monk seal and her pup, I'll move toward another area where there's a possibility of seeing one of the other 2 endangered species found here on Laysan Island. Though not an endangered species, here's a bird I've never seen so close. It's really incredible that I've actually been able to approach so near to one of the most lovely of birds, the delicate and ordinarily shy fairy tern, which has such pure snowy white plumage. The bird's dark eyes, delicate beak, and lightness of its plumage are the principal reason for its being called the fairy tern. The tern's mate is undecided about landing. When I rise, the dainty little bird leaves its perch. But shy though it is, it hasn't been startled off. Fairy terns are abundant on Laysan, but nowhere near as abundant as our sooty terns, which have been filling the skies ever since we first set foot on the island. At times, over 2 million sooty terns can be found here. These birds are found on all the Leeward Islands. They nest on the ground in dense colonies, with nests sometimes only 6 inches apart. The speckled plumage is the mark of an immature bird. It's probably the most abundant permanent resident of the Leeward Islands. This species of tern is most distinctive because of the high contrast of its black and white coloration. I'll leave these terns behind for the time being in my search to see one of the endangered bird species which might be observable closer to the shoreline. I'm in luck because on a rock in a small tidal pool, there are a number of the birds I've been looking for, and they're not at all alarmed. These are the endangered waterfowl known as the Laysan duck. Found in the wild only on this island, Laysan ducks just a few decades ago numbered less than 2 dozen. Now, through protection, their numbers have increased to around 280 here on Laysan Island. They hang on to existence only by a thin thread, and scientists are very painfully aware that even such an occurrence as a bad storm could easily wipe them out of existence overnight. The introduction of a predator on the island would also have a similar effect, if not so rapidly. Thus, extinction is a very real threat overhanging the Laysan duck. In addition to the approximately 280 Laysan ducks living in the wild here, which is the highest population since 1964, there are about 150 of the same species in captivity in zoos throughout the world. There's only a limited amount of time left, so I'll head on to investigate the coastal shallows. The Coast Guard crewmen had erected tents and brought ashore snorkeling equipment, while Palmer Sikora and I were observing the birds. So now I decided to see what sort of marine life inhabited the adjacent shallows. One of the things I've been curious about since our arrival here is what kind of marine life inhabits the shoreline shallows. The monk seals appear well fed, so evidently there's food enough for them. Yet few seabirds fish in these shallow waters, and there must be a reason why not. The monk seal has watched my entry into the water and has become very curious about me. Unafraid of humans as it is, this seal will probably follow me into the water. With the friendliness of a puppy dog, the monk seal moves closer and seems to want to frolic in the water near me. It's sad to think that man has very deliberately nearly exterminated them, and the battle for their survival remains a very tight one, even now when they've been afforded full protection. With the monk seal acting as something of an escort, the reason why the island's numerous seabird species are not fishing in these shallows becomes immediately apparent. Adequate populations of small fish and other marine life are strangely lacking. Even where there is some coral growing on the bottom, small marine life is minimal. Obviously, that's why the Laysan Island birds fly long distances to fish. A few scattered fish are visible here and there, but only enough to provide food for the seals. The reason for the barrenness of this water is because small marine life has no place to hide and little food is available. The very shallowness indicates that in turbulent weather, the water becomes so choked with sand that it becomes unsuitable habitat. There seems to be no point in further exploration of the monk seal's domain here, so I'll get back on shore and contact the refuge manager to see how he's doing with his survey of the endangered species here. It's almost impossible not to stop and take a last look at the friendly seal, which is so near extinction. It will be a truly fine accomplishment if that threatened extinction can be prevented. A quick check on my walkie-talkie finds Palmer Sikora across the island from me.
My survey has gone quite well, and Marlin will soon be coming across the island to join me as I continue my observations. So far, the bird population on Laysan seems to be slightly increased over last year's survey. Species such as the blue-faced booby have not been endangered in the past, but it's rewarding to know that they are still more than holding their own. This young booby is still not fully feathered, but it soon will be, and then it will join the large population of boobies which fill the air throughout this entire Leeward Islands refuge. More important than the booby population is that of the population of the third endangered species here, the Laysan finch, which is a member of the unique family of Hawaiian honeycreepers. In an effort to prevent possible extinction, successful transplantations of the Laysan finch have been made to nearby southeast island of Pearl and Hermes Reef. This species of finch exists nowhere else in the world. By making these observations and recording the sightings of the endangered species, correlation of the information later on will allow us to project what the actual population is of the Laysan finch and what we can do to keep it safe.
Palmer quickly briefs me on the results of his survey. Happily, his observations have shown all the wildlife populations on this island to be in as good or better shape than at last year's survey. That hasn't always been the case. There are many species of birds on Laysan Island, and determining their individual population levels is an exacting science. This is what Palmer Sikora will continue to do here throughout the remainder of this day. The sights we've seen from morning till we leave in the last deep golden light of sunset will remain vivid reminders of the beauty and isolation of this Garden of Eden one finds while exploring the Leewards. As we've seen, the fragile balance of nature is clearly in evidence on Laysan Island and all the rest of the Leewards. That's why it's so important that the whole island chain has been set aside as the Hawaiian Islands National Wildlife Refuge. This has made it an area where millions of birds can continue to breed in peace and where the endangered species can continue to live in safety. Their survival may conceivably be important to man's future, for conditions which affect these species could well be barometers for conditions which affect mankind. Many species inhabiting the Leeward Islands probably would disappear forever if the delicate natural balance were disrupted. With continued care, the unique wildlife of Laysan Island and the entire Leeward chain may always remain a truly exceptional part of the wild kingdom.
Mutual of Omaha, people you can count on, has presented Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
Mutual of Omaha, helping people find Medicare solutions for over 50 years. To learn more about plan options or how to protect your kingdom, contact us today.
Mutual of Omaha. Protect your kingdom.